Good morning, everybody. So today we are at the Tower of London, and we're going to have a little walk around, see what there is on offer. I haven't been here probably since I was a child. I don't know when Roger was last here. Have you been here before, Roger?
Not for years.
Okay, so it's going to be a new experience for both of us. It's £33.80 per adult to get in, and we're going to see if it's worth it. So amazingly enough, the tower that you can see in front of you was built in 1280. Quite incredible, over 800 years ago, or nearly 800 years ago. And this tower in front of me here was built in 1190. It's just hard to comprehend that anything was that old, really. And we just know so much about the history of this place and how many people were hanged here for being traitors or not. Yeah, it is amazing. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a very wet and rainy London. I'm Jill, behind the camera is Roger, and we are Which Way Now?
Call it off, let it go, all for nothing. I should have known. I've made mistakes, crashed and burned, so many chances, no time to learn. I need to find another way to make things right. I won't be coming back again a second time. Can't take it back. Everything.
So we've just been in to see the crown jewels, which were very impressive, I have to say. And the size of the doors protecting the actual jewels from the world, about this thick, steel, amazing. But yes, it was very impressive, and it was quite impressive. They had a little travelator going past, so you couldn't loiter too long past them either, which was always quite good. Yeah, I would definitely say, definitely worth a visit. Very impressive, particularly having seen the coronation of Charles on the TV last year. You can just see how much these things mean. I didn't realise, though, that actually the crown jewels only date from 1661, because it was during the Civil War when they tried to get rid of the monarchy. That actually then they basically melted down all of the crown jewels, and then Charles II had them all remade. So I didn't know that they only dated from 1661, but that's still nearly 400 years, so you can't really complain about that. So we're about to go into the White Tower, and this was built in about 1080, nearly 1,000 years ago. That just blows my mind. But this is also where the two princes were imprisoned. So the princes in the tower, where Richard III allegedly imprisoned them. Whether he did or not, who knows. But they allegedly were imprisoned here, and two bodies were found very near the spot that we're standing on. And it was interesting because we just read that originally this site was used as part of the London city walls of Londinium from the Romans in AD 43. And then when 800 years ago, whatever, when they decided to build the Tower of London, 1,000 years ago, they decided to reuse some of those walls to build the Tower of London. Originally, this line of kings here was promoted to show how important, I guess, the royal family were, and it was designed to show a line of kings in order. It wasn't particularly accurate either historically or of what they looked like, but it was designed to give people a sense of awe and majesty about the royal family. So this horse armour, and then the kings behind us with all the armour as well, that was what it was designed for, was to try and show people the awe and the majesty of the royal family. So it's interesting, this line of kings that they talked about, they also had heads made for the displays as well, and these are some of the heads and the hands that went with it. And it does say that these were made between 1685 and 1688. And one of them cost £40 to make this, but they also include the hands and the horse. Although that was quite a lot of money, that's quite a lot of carving to do for a horse, a head and some hands. So this is Elizabethan armour, and this is from the 3rd Earl of Worcester, apparently. And the thing was, during Elizabeth I's reign, because she was unmarried and didn't have any children, the armourers were not allowed to make any armour for the royal family, because obviously Elizabeth, as a woman, couldn't have any armour, so they used to make them for members of her court instead. And this was the Earl of Worcester's armour, And you can see that a lot of it has been, over time, has been sort of worn away or whatever, but it's still quite impressive, I have to say. I like the one for the horse there as well, the horse's head armour, that's quite cool. I just read as well, this armour, when you've got all of it on, it weighs 59 kilos, which is 130 pounds. That's more than most people weigh. That's just amazing. One thing we noticed just before we went in to see the crown jewels was actually the crown, the monogram above the door here, which actually says CR, so Charles III. We haven't noticed that anywhere else, but there's quite a few of them around in the Tower of London. Maybe it's because we haven't really been anywhere else royal, but they're all on all the sentry boxes as well, CR. So we've been in the White Tower, and we were quite surprised to find out that only 22 people were executed there, or executed in the grounds of the Tower of London, in the history of the Tower, which is quite surprising. But apparently an awful lot of people were executed on Tower Hill, which is outside of the grounds and a bit further up that way. And the last person to be executed was actually in 1941, and he was a German spy. He apparently parachuted into London, had lemon with him, which was used to make invisible ink visible and that kind of thing. So he had a lot of things that showed that he was a spy, and he was executed here, shot the next day by the Scots Guards. And that was the last person who was actually executed here. And apparently when Victoria came here, she was so moved by the stories of the people who'd been executed that she ordered a memorial stone to be placed just about here. And that was where Anne Boleyn was actually thought to have been executed. And we found out that the reason they were executed here as opposed to on Tower Hill was because at Tower Hill there would be thousands and thousands of people who'd come out for an execution, and they didn't want these particular people to have a massive crowd of people around them when they were being executed. So they were executed in private, basically. That's why they were executed inside here. The other thing was that Catherine Howard, we were reading, bit of a strange thing, but she had a practice execution block brought to her rooms in the towers so that she could practice being executed, and she was also very jolly, very happy with her executioners, and just seemed a bit strange to us, but there you go. So we're about to go in here into the Lower Wakefield Tower, and we're going to find out what secrets and tortures have been going on here at the tower. Who knows? So we've just been into what is called the Torture Tower or something like that, and it was quite interesting in terms of they talked about the fact that there were actually only about 40 odd people who ever been tortured in the tower here. Torture was never part of English law, but it did happen, and there was a replica rack in there, which apparently was one of the kinder tortures. There was also a scavenger's daughter, I think it was called, and that was basically where you were folded into three and crushed, and they could only do that to somebody for about an hour. I don't know if they then died, I'm not sure, but it was pretty horrible. And then there was the manacles, which was basically hanging from the wall as well. All pretty horrible ways to be tortured, I would say. You need to be doing this properly. Do I? So this is Traitor's Gate, and again this was once by the river, and basically the boat would come up, the people would come out up the steps here, and what we always assumed is that anybody who came in through Traitor's Gate was never going to see the light of day again. But actually, as we found out, there was only 40 odd people actually killed, 22 people killed here at the tower. Maybe some of them died of old age, but yeah, it was not nearly as gruesome as we thought it was going to be, which is good. So this is St Thomas's Tower, and this is where a lot of the King's lodgings were. It was built in the 1200s, and it was built by Henry III, I think it was, for his son Edward I as well. And they both lived here, and when there was going to be coronations, a lot of the queens launched their coronation procession from here as well. Obviously it looks very different now, but it is quite an impressive building, beautifully high ceilings as well. In 1471 there was another death here at the Tower of London, but nobody knows if it was a murder or not. Henry VI basically was here. He'd been imprisoned during the Wars of the Roses, and some say he died of grief because he'd heard his son was killed in battle. Others say he died because somebody stabbed him while he was praying. But whatever the reason, he certainly died here, and on May the 21st every year, representatives of Eton College and King's College, Cambridge, both come here to lay lilies on the ceremony of the lilies. And because they were both those establishments were established by Henry VI. So you need to be very careful if you come to the Tower of London, because there are a lot of spiral staircases. It's definitely not for anybody who's mobility impaired. So we've just been in to see the Royal Beasts exhibition, and I didn't know, but there were live animals kept here at the Tower of London from about the 1200s to the 1830s. There was a polar bear that was basically let out to swim in the Thames to fish on a large piece of rope. Ostriches were died because they were fed nails, because visitors thought ostriches ate metal. Bizarre. James I invented a nipple for feeding sick lion cubs, which was good. Various bits like that. And then in 1832, after lots of attacks on members of the public, they actually took them off to the London Zoo, which was probably for the best, really. So the Tower of London costs £33.80 as an adult to get into. I think it's actually pretty good value. There's an awful lot to see here. We haven't done all of it because the weather's just been too horrible, to be honest. But it is very, very interesting. It's fantastically... It just makes you think, you know, with the tower built, this tower behind us built 900 years ago, another bit's built 1,000 years ago nearly. You just think that's just amazing that this is still standing in the middle of London today. What do you think, Roger?
Yeah, no, it is incredible, isn't it? It's an incredible place to come, and just going through some of the history and what actually happened. Again, very much misconceptions about number of people who were tortured here. You always think Tower of London, yeah, loads of people tortured.
I thought hundreds of people were tortured and executed here,
Yeah,
but actually only 22 people died here.
Yeah, exactly. I know lots of people were taken from here onto Tower Hill.
Yeah.
But effectively, yeah, not nearly as many people. But a fascinating place, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so did I. I thought it was fantastic, and I think it is pretty good value for money as well.
So we got here at 9 o'clock on the dot as the gates were opening, and it was actually quite quiet at that stage. It's now
12:30.
12:30, thank you, and it's rather more busy despite the weather. There's still people wandering around.
But we could stay here for another 2 or 3 hours if we wanted to, quite happily, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much to see.
Yeah. No, thoroughly enjoyed it.
Definitely, highly recommended. So if you enjoyed this rather damp video, please like and subscribe and send us a comment.